Welcome to another week of MLS picks. Heading into the holiday weekend, we have MLS Week 22 with 13 games on Saturday and one standalone match, Atlanta hosting Philly on Sunday. The big news of the week, though, comes off the field on the coaching side of MLS. Toronto FC with only 19 points, 14th in the East, they decided to part ways with head coach and sporting director Bob Bradley after last week's defeat in New England and a horrendous start to the season. Terry Dunfield, who was coaching TFC's under-17 TFC Academy, will take over on an interim basis. Meanwhile, in Miami, they'd already fired their coach a few weeks back. They were the only team below TFC in the Eastern standings. They'd already let go of Phil Neville. And they made a major announcement Wednesday morning naming Tata Martino their new head coach. He recently coached Atlanta to an MLS Cup championship in 2018 and was coaching the Mexican national team. Before we get into the picks this week, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more MLS picks. Also, if you want a free $30, be sure to check out the link in the description of this video below for my link to Rakuten. Simply sign up, make a purchase of $30 or more on one of the many products offered at Rakuten, and we'll both get $30. On to the picks. Miami and Austin is where I'm going to start with. The losing streak continued for Inter Miami last week as they got beat down in Philly, losing 4-1. It was their 7th defeat in a row, and that's seen them be outscored 16-5 during that stretch. Now, if there's any glimmer of hope for Miami this weekend, it's that their home form is usually a bit stronger than their road form, like many teams. 4 of their 5 wins this season have come in their home stadium. They've scored and conceded 12 at home, and they've scored in 7 of 9 of their home games. Going further back, Miami has scored in 22 of their past 24 home games as well. And while Austin has posted back-to-back 3-0 home wins, they're just 2-1-5 while being outscored 17-8 on their travels. Austin has allowed a goal in 13 straight road games, while allowing 2 or more in 11 of those 13 games. Their past 4 road scorelines have been a 4-1 loss, a 2-1 loss, a 2-1 win, and a 2-2 draw. So the theme is goals at both ends in Austin road matches. There's only one previous meeting between these teams, and that had goals as well, and it was a 5-1 Austin win last season. I think that both teams to score is a good bet here at -160. However, Miami has 0 draws this season, so if both teams score, it's quite possible someone also finds a second. If you want a little bit better odds, you can go both teams to score in over 2.5 at -105. Our next bet will go to the San Jose and LA Galaxy game. It's another edition of the Cali Classico. San Jose, they've just dropped 2 in a row, but they're still 5th in the West, while the Galaxy are coming off 3 straight draws and are 13th in the conference. Los Angeles won the first meeting this season on their home pitch by a 2-1 scoreline. The game was actually only 1-0 though for LA until stoppage time, when LA scored a second in the 91st minute and San Jose pulled one back later on in the 94th minute. But with those 2 late goals, it extends a streak with these teams playing each other of both teams scoring in 3 or more goals in each of the past 5 games in this rivalry. The previous 4 results were all oddly won by the road team. Both teams won 3-2 on the road last season, while the previous 2 games before that were also won by the road team 3-2 to San Jose and 3-1 to LA. This is actually the matchup that has produced the most 3 or more goal games in MLS history between any 2 teams. 51 of the 80 regular season all-time games have seen 3 or more goals scored. The Earthquakes lost at home for the first time this season last week, 2-1 to St. Louis, but they are 6-3-1 and have outscored their opponents 14-7 overall at home this season. The Galaxy drew 0-0 in Colorado last week, after also drawing 2-2 and 1-1 the weeks prior. On the road, they're just 1-4-5, and they've been outscored 16-5, and have just 1 road win in their past 11, dating back in to last season. You could look to the over, which is the trend in this rivalry, if you think LA can get on the score sheet, but I'm just going to go for the San Jose win, and that's at +115 odds. Staying in the Western Conference, I'm going to go to Sporting Kansas City and the Vancouver Whitecaps. It was 1-1 in Vancouver earlier this season when these teams met on June 3rd. Ryan Gold scored the tying goal in the 88th minute through a penalty. With goals in 4 straight now, Gold could have some value if you're looking for any player props. He has odds of +275 as an anytime goal scorer. Now, while SKC got a shutout at home to Chicago last week, they had been rolling offensively, scoring in 6 straight games prior and scoring 14 goals in those games. Conceding to Chicago, though, last week extends a run of 9 games straight where they've allowed a goal. It's been all good news in Vancouver, though, of late for the Whitecaps. They're Canadian Championship winners and are now undefeated in 4 league games after last week's 3-2 road win over LAFC. It was, though, a very rare road win for Vancouver, having failed to win any of their previous 15 games on the road before that. After St. Louis's 37 goals, Vancouver are the West's second highest scorers with 30 goals on the season. Overall, their XG of 28.8 is only behind Seattle's of 31.4 in the league. The Caps have scored in 9 straight games, but have also conceded in 8 of those 9. A bet on both teams to score would be 8-1 in recent Vancouver games, while the same bet would have been 6-1 in recent SKC games. So let's keep going with that trend and go both teams to score in over 2.5 at minus 105 odds. Then we'll go to the Sunday game, standalone game of Atlanta hosting Philadelphia. Atlanta may be 6th in the East, but they've actually only won 1 of 7 and 2 of 11 recent league games and just 2 of 12 overall. Now coming back home to Mercedes-Benz Stadium should help. They're 6-3-1 on their home pitch. They've scored 24 goals in those 10 games, and they're undefeated in 4, with scorelines being 2-2, a 3-1 win, a 3-3 draw, and a 4-0 win. The Union are 4th in the East, and they have just a single defeat in their past 12 games. Philly on the road is 3-2-4 and have allowed a goal in 4 straight road matches and an 8 of 9 this season, though. Now let's look at some of the totals for these teams this season. If you are a totals bettor, both teams have played to the over this season, with Atlanta being the league's highest over 2.5 rated team at 15-5. Meanwhile, Philadelphia is 12-7. Atlanta home matches are tied for the most over 2.5 totals this season, with St. Louis at 8-2. The 3.7 average goals per match in Atlanta home games, though, is tied for a league high with Columbus. Philadelphia road games have also seen plenty of goals, going 6-3 to the over, with an average of 3.0 goals per match. Both teams offer plenty of offensive weapons here, and they create lots of chances. Philly is 6th overall in XG, while Atlanta is 8th. Atlanta is also 6th in shots on target. Let's back goals here for our MLS picks, and once again, go both teams to score in over 2.5 at minus 110. Next up, I'm going to go to one parlay bet for MLS Week 22, and we're just asking for 3 teams to score a goal in this 3-game parlay. And we'll start it off with Toronto and Real Salt Lake. Toronto was winless in 5, and last week's 2-1 road loss in New England cost head coach Bob Bradley his job. Management clearly sided with the star players, who have been very vocal all season long about how they weren't liking what was going on in Toronto. Toronto's been awful, but they have scored in 7 of 10 home games, and they have only 1 home defeat. This is also a chance for the likes of those star players like Insigne and Bernardeschi to step up after Bradley's firing. RSL are undefeated in 6 games across all competitions, and they're the league's best road team at 5-2-3 with 17 points. They've scored 14 goals and conceded 15 on their travels. Now, while they're undefeated in 6 straight on the road in MLS and 9 straight across all competitions, they have conceded in all of those 6 and in 9 of 10 overall road games this season. Toronto could see the new coach bounce with Bradley gone, and they do have some decent home form, but they are also missing some key players to the Gold Cup, and RSL are just so good on the road this season that it's kind of tough to know what to expect here, but I do think Toronto will get on the scoreboard, so let's go to Toronto to score for the first leg of the parlay. Next, let's go to Nashville and DC United. Nashville was shut out last week 2-0, and also the week before 1-0. Now, both of those did come on the road, though. At home, they're 7-2-1, and they've outscored their opponents 19-6. They've scored in 8 of 10 overall home matches in the league, and in each of their past 6, where they've scored a total of 15 goals in that stretch. DC posted a shutout last week, an impressive 3-0 home beatdown of the undefeated Cincinnati. That was their first clean sheet, though, in 5 games. The teams drew 1-1 in DC last month, extending Nashville's all-time undefeated streak against DC to 5 games at 3-2-0. But win, lose, or draw, I think this week Nashville at least gets on the scoreboard. So let's go Nashville to score for the second leg of this parlay. And we'll wrap it up for St. Louis to score against Colorado. St. Louis may be in a run of poor form with only 1 win in 5, but that 1 win came in their last game, winning 2-1 in San Jose. They're also still first in the West with 32 points and have scored in 10 of 11 home games across all competitions this season. Colorado, though, has been poor all season, sitting at the foot of the overall standings with only 14 points. In fact, their 2 wins across the first 19 rounds ties a dubious all-time MLS record. Even playing at home against another struggler last week in the LA Galaxy, that wasn't enough to get a win as they drew 0-0. The Rapids are now winless in 8 in all competitions and winless in 8 and 9 in all competitions. Across those 9 games, Colorado has actually been shut out in 3 straight and also in 6 of 9. So it's the first versus the last in the West, and these teams drew 1-1 in Colorado in April, and this looks like a good spot for St. Louis to string together a winning streak. Even without some of their injured stars, St. Louis is still getting goal contributions from the likes of Nicholas Gioacchini, who leads the team with 8 goals, and youngster Samuel Adrian, who scored his first 2 goals in his first start for the club last week. You could probably look for a St. Louis home win, or you could just ask St. Louis to score and tie that with Nashville to score and Toronto to score and get minus 140 odds. Finally, here are just a few stats and trends from some of the other games happening this weekend to consider that I don't necessarily have picks on, but just some thoughts to consider if maybe you were looking at those games for a bet. And we'll go to Montreal and New York City FC. Montreal, one of the league's top home teams right now at 7-0-1. They've outscored their opponents 15-3. They've won 6 in a row at home while keeping clean sheets in all of those 6. And home or away, they've actually kept a clean sheet in 10 of their past 16 games across all competitions. All that looks like a good spot for Montreal to win here when you consider New York. They're one of the league's worst road teams, still winless at 0-6-5, getting outscored 14-8. Overall, the Pigeons have tied an all-time low club record of going winless in 11 straight MLS matches. However, New York has only ever lost twice in 17 all-time games with Montreal. So which of these trends ends this week or continues is kind of tough to know. In the West, we have Seattle hosting Houston as well. And Seattle's already beaten Houston 1-0 earlier this season in May. Now, Houston may be right behind Seattle in the West with 27 points compared to Seattle's 29. Closing that gap this weekend could be a tough chore at Lumen Field. The Dynamo are a very different team when they play home and away. At home, they're 7-1-1 while scoring 17 and conceding 3 goals. On the road, though, they're just 1-2-7 and have been outscored 22-7. That streak continued last week when they were shut out 3-0 on the road in Austin. Houston has now conceded in 21 of their past 22 road games, with only 3 road wins in that time. Houston also struggles against Seattle, perhaps more than they struggle against almost any other team. The Dynamo have lost 11 of their past 12 against Seattle and have lost each of their last 14 MLS games that have been played in Seattle. So it looks like a good spot for Seattle. However, Seattle will be missing the likes of Jordan Morris and both roll-ons to the Gold Cup. They're also winless in 5. They've failed to score in 4 of those 5. And in fact, they've scored the least goals of any team in MLS over the past 13 rounds. So again, for either team to win here, some of these dreadful streaks are going to need to change, and it's just tough to know which will. Finally, a couple stats and pointers from Orlando and Chicago. Orlando were held off the score sheet in Seattle last week, drawing 0-0, but they had scored a goal in each of their previous 8 games. Chicago has suddenly tightened up defensively, and specifically on the road, where they were previously really bad. They shut out Sporting KC at Children's Mercy Park last weekend, winning 2-0, and defeated the Timbers in Portland 2-1 the match prior. They've now kept clean sheets in 3 of their past 4 road games, while only allowing 2 goals in those 4. But prior to those past 4 road games, like I said, they had been really poor, and they conceded 19 of 21 games away from home. So do with those stats as you will for those final 3 games, but just some things to consider this weekend and some of the other games going on. So to recap my MLS Week 22 picks, we have Miami and Austin, both teams to score, San Jose to win, Sporting Kansas City versus Vancouver, both teams to score in over 2.5, Atlanta versus Philadelphia, both teams to score in over 2.5, Toronto, St. Louis, and Nashville all to score in a parlay. And if you want one alternative bet on some of those picks, you could also combine a Miami and Austin over 1.5, Sporting Kansas City and Vancouver, both teams to score, and San Jose just to score at plus 150 if you prefer to get, bundle 3 of those picks together to get some different odds. So once again, be sure to like this video, leave me your picks in the comments below for this weekend, subscribe to the channel for more picks this season, and good luck with all of your MLS picks this weekend, everyone.